Hello and welcome to my podcast, Learn Reiki and Connect, and it's with me, Tracy Matthews. So I hope you're doing well as you're listening into this week's discussion, because like I mentioned each week, we are helping each other to connect in with that light. And I'd like to welcome any new ones and those that have been listening in for a little bit. Welcome to this space. I really kind of wanted to put a podcast together to sort of help all those of us that are going through, at times, difficult parts of our lives. Maybe something has thrown you off balance. Maybe it's a mental health issue. Maybe it's a physical illness or something isn't quite aligned in your life. Maybe it's simply you're in a rut and you don't know how to get out of it. And of course, once we're in these cycles and we seem to go on, these patterns and these situations, sometimes we don't know what to do and how to get out of it. And I think worst is that we seem to have this notion or this idea that whilst we're having an awakening or we're on our spiritual path and journey, we shouldn't be feeling low or getting stuck or be struggling. And it's those kind of thoughts that we shouldn't be feeling these kind of things, that actually we can sort of be our own worst enemy. What happens is that we can conclude that we're worthless and no good. So I want you not to feel that way. I want to share with you what I have found with my own life and what I've learned, and also with working with many clients over the years. Because what I've learned is that some of the most uncomfortable challenges facing hardship and difficult times is how we grow. It is not a sign that something's wrong with you. In fact, if anything, I've come to conclude it means that we're actively on our path, and there is a level of moving forward and identifying if we're feeling stuck or we're feeling low. And it's through these times that we actually change and we find our inner power. But here's the thing. What we almost want to experience is the stuff that there's no worries. We want peace. We want a life of ease and so on. And it's true, when we're on our path and when there is alignment, we can feel peace and joy. But there is also that other part of us, or if you like, the soul part of us, that has come here to experience both polarities. Now, I think it's quite true that we've heard it said, and I've certainly realised that, the answers are within us. What we need to do is figure out how to access it. So like you, I'm still figuring this out and I'm learning. And this is what I refer to and call my inner voice, because it's helped me through my life, through my work. And it's helped me to understand and identify, what's stopping me? What's keeping me stuck? What's making me misaligned and what's kind of not serving me anymore, so I can identify it, look at it for what it really is and let it go. Because it's helped me looking through what I term the lens of the soul. And that's different. It's a different lens, a different window. Because a lot of what we experience here in our physical life is loaded with emotion, thoughts. And when we look through it from the lens of our soul, it gives us a crystal clear perspective. And sometimes we just need to sit with that. And that's how you and I can remember our truth, remember who we are and what we've come here to do. So I'm just going to jump right on in with this podcast. We are talking about, you've probably heard it said, or you might have said it yourself, I chose a hard life. So is that how you feel about your life? Is that sort of correctly sums up really the experiences you've had through perhaps childhood and to where you are now in your life. Did you choose a hard life? Whilst you're sort of thinking and answering that, I'm just going to let you know where I'm at in terms of how I respond to it being a hard life. And I would say, in parts, it's been hard. And when I went from childhood to my mid-30s, without being consciously aware, my goodness, I felt that. That deeper level of consciousness for me was actually hard. It was quite painful. Even though I didn't articulate it, there was no vocabulary back then in the 70s and 80s and and sort of 90s. There wasn't really the wording that we've got now to explain it. But the hard bit for me was that I felt like a fish out of water. It didn't feel right. Something was missing. Now, for some, it might be that it's been a physical, hardness and journey in terms of what you've been through. Loss, all these kind of things. So I'm going to really sort of get you to look and answer that yourself. So what about you? How would you respond to that? Did you choose a hard life? So we're going to be looking at this topic. Why would a soul even choose a hard life? And I'd like to share what I've learned from reading, especially the Akashic records, about the soul's journey and how to change the energy of having no choice to it is your choice about the level of hardship in your life. So stick around. Stay with me and just hit that subscribe button and join me every week, because we are just, like I said, helping each other out to stay connected to Source whilst we're experiencing life in our physical body. Now, we said we'd sign up for it when we get here, and we knew it'd be hard, but once we get here, we lose our way a little bit. And we spend half our time sort of going through a lot of the stuff that we don't want to go through in order for us to get back on our path and aligned. So, okay, we're going to be looking at why would a soul choose a hard life? What do you think? What would you think the reasons are? I've certainly sat and had a little think about this myself. And I even sort of thought about this. Well, could we have an easy, simple life and still grow? And I would say yes. I think we could. But we would learn a lot more differently. And perhaps even in a slower sort of way. Because actually we arrive at deeper levels of growth, both positively aligned when we have our experiences and what's going on in our lives, and through the hard ones. So I think it's fair to say that more difficult and harder challenges, both of them, good times and bad, I think are important, but the harder challenges are the ones that change us. We see a level of growth in there that perhaps we wouldn't necessarily gain or observe or know about ourselves if it were all easy. So what do you think about that? And just following on for that, what I would like to share with my own learning and just really kind of where it took me. Because you might have heard me in previous podcasts or in written articles. 2013 was quite significant because I started my journey with the Akashic records. Because that really opened the door inside me. It's a kind of an internal opening in my awareness, my mind, and in my essence of who I was. Because up until that point, I guess most of my beliefs were more of what I was told to believe. And I didn't question a lot of the stuff which I was told to believe, because when you're told to believe, especially if it's more on a religious thing, you sort of take it as gospel. You sort of take it on as your sort of as your own as such. But what happened to me in 2010, I felt that God spark, that light in a way that I'd never experienced it before. And that was through meditation and with the intention to connect with that essence of source of God. And that kind of set off a cognizant thinking. Now, what I mean by that, it was coming from within as opposed to what I was being told and kind of sort of believed. Have you noticed that? You know, there's a shift that we're all beginning to question things. We're coming to our own conclusions, and I think that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, just sort of getting to that point where we look at perhaps a little bit of history of what we've been told, dig a bit deeper, and sort of get our own sense of belief and understanding, rather than somebody told us this and yes, and then we take it on. I mean, some things could be passed on that way. But I just think, you know, as we become a little bit more aware, a little bit more connected to the part of us, looking at things a little bit more as to why we believe it, will serve us, because then we can reach our own understanding with it. We own something that we believe, or we own something that resonates, rather being told it and believe it. So I guess this is where I sort of came like a dog with a bone, as I refer to, because I really wanted more. This internal thinking got me thinking. And this is where I really found another lens or another window to look through. Because I began to get a little bit more learning about the soul. Because the soul nature, or the soul origin, this authentic part of ourselves has a desire to learn, grow, and have experiences. And this is where I'd had to sort of really stop and really sort of think about this, because we choose these experiences. In fact, we make a plan. We have a life lesson or a theme, and we create experiences around that. And that sort of kind of got me a little bit, because that was the first time really I'd kind of realised that I'm creating this. And I always think, because for me, I created a lot of misalignment, and sometimes we create a lot of mess. So if we create that, we can create the aligned stuff. I began to see it for what it really was. If we create it, we can uncreate it. And you know what? There's more. There are souls who are that specifically volunteer. In other words, they come into a challenging life, a life that has hardships. And why? Because their soul has come to bring consciousness into the planet, into our awareness. And they go into some of the darker life hardships. And that's to shine a light. And, you know, we're going to circle back round to that and look at that a little bit. But that's something that you may be aware of, or maybe this is the first time you're hearing it. And you might need to sit with that. It might react something in you. It might cause a little bit of a, not sure about that, or, that makes sense. Because when I was starting to come to an awareness around that and sitting with that, it began to resonate. And what that will look like in some of your lives, in our lives that we go through, well, that will mean a difficult childhood. It might include some level of child trauma. There might even be a level of abuse, violent relationships, those kind of experiences, hardships in various aspects of your life. And included in that is a lack of financial stability, where things are just really at a low ebb. And this is quite sobering, really, because these are things, when we go through them, we feel that we're kind of down on our luck. And I had to sort of understand what it meant for these souls who specifically volunteered to experience these kind of life happenings around them, with people, for themselves. And this is the thing, I saw this in the reality of working over the years with my clients. But it wasn't until I started to access and look at the Akashic records where I began to sort of see that this is, in fact, a thing. And I would see this coming out in the Akashic records. I chose a hard life. And I would have reading after reading with many of these kind of souls that sign up, if you like, for these kind of experiences. Because they were ready to lift the veil and to see it from a soul perspective. And you know what? Each person that, and I think it was very mutual for them and also for me to sort of see this in action. There was a real recognition of their truth. You know, when you get to that point of level of orientation about why a soul would want to choose those kind of experiences. And most would report back to me once we get to that understanding, we're talking about this, is that they had an inner voice that was guiding them through whatever experience they were going through. I found it quite fascinating that they knew that they were going to be all right and that they would go through this. Even there was a level of cognizance and intuition around this. And I actually found this quite sort of interesting because this was a level of, if you like, life, or this sort of owning that space in terms of wanting a hard life, where I had to sort of sit and really kind of think about this and to sort of see how that affected me and did it make sense to me. And incidentally, when I read for a person, I only see what the soul allows me to see. So this kind of session, whenever I go into it, it's not a psychic reading as such. For me, as a practitioner and how I've learned to look at the Akashic records, I'm pretty much guided by my spirit guide. I'm pretty much their guides and how I view these things. And some of these things that I have been able to see over the years is that very thing, the soul nature, the origination, what it is, what the soul is wanting to experience. And that level of understanding when a soul reaches that point in their path. And of course, that's why they reach out for such a session like this, because they're ready to piece it all together. They're ready to get that big picture and to see what it is. They knew that something about their experiences and why that things were so tough and so hard, they knew that it was going to be found through a deeper level of themselves, which is their soul. And from this, I'd be able to see so much, which was what was going on in someone's life, how the person's manifesting or not. And this was a biggie for me, because when I saw mine, I thought, yeah, I am not manifesting. And I knew it and I felt it, and I didn't know how to sort of get myself out of it and work through it. And incidentally, if this is going on for you, you cannot get to grips with this whole manifestation, you might want to listen to the podcast, which is all about this. It's called Try This to Manifest What You Want, because I talk about the help and assistance that we've kind of forgotten about when we get here and have our physical, dense 3D life. There is so much help. And that may help you to get back on track, because that helped me. Just acknowledgement that I was having issues was enough for me to sort of like maneuver myself out of it. And of course, this is the kind of stuff, patterns, cycles, things that stop a person from moving forward, gaining clarity over the lessons that a person has chosen in their life. And of course, it's really beautiful when we begin to remember the guides, the inner and outer structure of our spirit guides that you have put in place. So it's going to help you. It's going to help you maneuver through all the tough times. And quite often it is us that say, you know what, I want a little bit more. I'm going to grow a little bit more in this life as John or as me, Tracy. And quite often our guides will go, really? Are we sure we want to do that? And we go, yeah. And then we come in, we're going to remember this, we're going to remember this, we're going to do it. And then we get here and then we just get stuck. We get overwhelmed. Most of our learning is through the polarity of the other end of it, of misalignment. Most of my life being misaligned helped me to grow into alignment. So much misalignment and just all that stuff in life that I choose not to. I'm going to create the other stuff. And sometimes that's what it takes. How many times are we going to keep doing the same thing over and over again? And it really helps when we start to become aware of this, because sometimes a lot of this we're doing unconsciously. We don't even know that we are consciously doing it. And this is where we can listen to something like this, where we just go and watch something, hear something, read something. Whereas there's that inner voice just helps us to get a little bit of awareness as to what's really going on. And it's never by coincidence when a soul is ready to remember consciously and tune in to this aspect of themselves. It's never, ever by coincidence. And I've did a podcast about the spirit guides, that you are not alone. And that's really incredible, because they're very well aware when it is the most divine time for you to remember certain parts of who you are, certain parts of what you agreed to, and certain times in your life when you need to understand, why did I experience something so horrible? What did I learn from it? And of course, this kind of leads us then into really that question of how to change the energy of when we feel like we're having no choice. 2, it is your choice. So stay with me, don't go anywhere, because this is really, I think, quite helpful, just to help you, just to sort of gain that little bit of level of orientation and understanding. Because if we're in that energy of no choice, how does that make a person feel? Well, it creates a feeling of disempowerment. that just makes us feel stuck. Well, what can we do with that? Well, it just means that we're right here, we've got no choice. That there's no way out of it. Though no matter what we do, we're unable to kind of move forward. Where in actual fact, when we look at the perspective of the soul, this isn't the case. This is something that we create here in our physical lives, where we feel separated from God, from Source. Most of the time we're sort of reactively dealing with what's going on around us. Sometimes we're not even aware of our reactions to an action. And this is how we begin to start working it all out, understanding ourselves. But from a soul perspective, we're going to sign up to both. And what I mean by that, both polarities. We're going to have the fun and the good, as well as those times which make us question, that evoke us. And it's quite often through those times of hurt, sadness, lost, or losing someone, coming to terms or trying to bury what happened to us in our childhood, where it all starts coming to the surface. And this can be really a tough time experience. And quite often when we step on our spiritual path, or we start becoming more aware of ourselves, that this is the time we kind of want to squash these things. But it's like our soul knows otherwise. It's brought to the surface. That's when we begin to identify, look at, and start the process of healing. What happened to us and why it's even happened to us. So where are you on that? Have you got a hard life? Did you choose? What is that inner part really sort of letting you know? What do you get a sense of? What's actually happened to you or happening to you? Because this can be a really difficult time. And once we're in that energy, when we feel disempowered, we feel we've got no choice, and we're sort of stuck in whatever misery that we feel that we're going through, we think that this is it. And this is where I've learned in my own experience and with working with others, we can get ourselves out of whatever it is that we're in. And sometimes it's not necessarily changing what's happened to us or changing the effect, but simply understanding why we've experienced it, and then we change our reaction to it. And I think that's really quite powerful, because this can happen, and we see that this can happen. We see this when we go through a debilitating illness, or perhaps we've had an accident, and it changes our life from there forward. But how a person then can move into a different part of themselves and understanding life and moving forward, and how still that they can create and bring joy into their lives. So we might need to just to sort of look at sort of where is that sort of for us? Where is that hardship? Where is it for you? For some, it is simply that they cannot find love. It seems to elude them. There's no joy. They feel very alone in life. Is that your experience? For some, it is really what's happened to them, the trauma that they went through in childhood. And they spent years of trying to sort of work through it, counselling, or perhaps even worse, they've kind of buried it and forgotten. And then all of a sudden it gets triggered and it gets brought up, and we're not prepared for it. For some, it's a lack of financial security. Their home, work, where they live, where they are, the economic place, the whole structure is just not good. So it just means you're constantly trying to make ends meet, and it's exhausting you. So for some, it could mean their mental health, that everything around them, it's taking its toll on them. So it's a battle of the mind, really, as to more than battle of what in the physical. Or maybe it's a bit of both. So where is that with you? Where is the hardship? Or really, where is the hardship that you chose, that you would learn from this? And like I said, when I'm sitting and I'm with a client and we're talking about this, there is always a recognition of truth. Because this is something that inside you will shift. It's going to let you know. You'll either feel differently about something, or something will evoke you to help you to look at this in a different light, a different lens, a different window, not through just the physical 3D of the life that we have now. So when we look at the soul perspective and looking at this of perhaps where you might be sitting, and I know that I've been in that energy too, is when there is that energy of no choice, because that is a level of really disempowerment. So what do we do to get out of that? This has been quite interesting, because this is where a lot of human nature and how we get on is pretty much universal. And the records talk a lot about this, and what I've seen is that whatever hardship or challenge or whatever endurance has gone on, there's a level when there is a time where you overcome it, is what will help the person then to start healing and to start sort of using the very thing that sort of hit their mental health, made them slide into a level of feeling very uncomfortable, having to deal with all these problems, where they begin to start shifting into their power, because it's like they've got a level of overcoming it or seeing it for what it is. And this is quite interesting, because I see this, because this is what I would term as a powerful shift in someone's life. That from that state of being kind of not understanding, being disempowered, they no longer see their situation as being a victim. That they're actually then able to sort of use it to help others. And that's really powerful. So rather that life is treating you unfairly, it's like this is where the soul begins to realise that you've chose this hardship, and you know what? We're going to bring light to it. And I always find that fascinating, because this is done either sort of in a very conscious way, where then the person begins to really begin to help themselves. So, for example, if they've had struggled with alcohol, they've grown up in a household, that they go then to seek help, and then they go into that line of work because they want to help others. So they begin to help others that are wanting to get out of the patterns. And what better way? When you've been through something, you know all the pitfalls. You know what it's like. You've walked the walk, not just talking it. And that's really powerful for some people. It's really powerful and gives them some truth, gives them something, almost like a mission and a purpose. Well, I'm going to help somebody else because I got out of that. It nearly killed me going through all of that. And now I'm going to use it to help others. And this is something that I've been privy to in many of the sessions, especially when it is that they volunteered and chose various hardships, various things that they were going to go through, because they're now going to use this to heal. Not view it as a victim that they've got no control over what's happening, but rather owning up, having this ownership. And this has been really amazing, because then whether it's in a spiritual capacity or literally in a hands-on capacity, this is when a person will use the very thing that they have overcome. They're going to use it then to get that knowledge out, to help others, to bring awareness to it, whatever aspect that is. This is where somebody will make sure that somebody else will help them and help them to move forward. So where are you in terms of the hardship of your life? How would you put it down to? What would you say is going on for you? Maybe it's a sobering thought. Maybe this is now for you to come to terms. And it is sobering to know that we make a plan, that we put the level of hardship into our lives. And quite often what I've seen, and it's happened in my own life, is that we don't know and we continue unconsciously just trying to do what we know best. And quite often that's a pattern and it's a cycle. And we just keep doing the same thing over and over again until we break that, or till we view it differently. And that brings us up to that point. I chose a half life. Well, then we can really own those aspects that are really challenging, hard, and that have been really difficult to overcome. And perhaps we're still enduring it. And it's a process. But it means that we can own it. So when these hardships arise, it's quite interesting. I don't ask why. I'm asking now, how can I create more of what I want? What am I learning from this so I can learn it? Because I want to learn it and I want to move, and because essentially we really are wanting that ease. We want the joy, and my goodness, when we get on our path, there is joy. We will experience, and we can, but it perhaps isn't going to come from the places that we think it's going to come from. It comes from the unexpected bits of the joy, that inner joy and peace, which is not from others, it's not external. It comes from within. So I hope that this has helped you, where we've just talked a little bit about this whole sort of hardship in life, because the reality is there is going to be a level of both. And if for you there is more of the hardship, more things that you've had to overcome and endure, then maybe this is just the divine time for the essence of your soul to know that. Or maybe your guides are just giving you a nudge and letting you know that you're all right. How are you now going to move in to the next phase? Because that's the more trickier one. Because sometimes we get quite comfortable in our uncomfortableness. When we get stuck, we kind of, creating something else is scary. It feels like, well, let's just stay where we are because we know what to expect. But this is perhaps when we are ready now to move in to a new phase, a creative phase. So I hope that's helped, and I hope that has helped you really to continue connecting with that light that is within you, because it's going to be that light, that inner voice, that part of you that is navigating you, that will let you know, that will shine the light on your path as to why you've chosen a hard life and how you can move forward in whatever phase that you're in. So please do hit the subscribe button, and so you don't miss any more topics that we're going to be talking about. Please join me. I am on YouTube, Spotify, and I'm also listed in other platforms which you might like to find out, and you might find it easier to listen on there. In the meantime, you might like to visit the website learnreikiandconnect.co.uk. You'll find a lot of information there. I've put together the online Reiki, so you don't have to travel. If you're an independent learner, you might like to take a look at that and how you can then really connect in with that light even more consciously, so that you can hear that part. Or perhaps you'd like to work with me over Skype with the levels of 1, 2 and 3. You might want to find out a little bit more and the structure of how that works. Maybe it is the Akashic Records, because for me that was an incredible part of my journey. That's the bit that really helped me to be here right now and own it. Because boy, some of the times I wanted out. And I wasn't really enjoying the physical. It wasn't until I began to really sort of remember my soul nature, my origination, who I am, what I am, and all the bits that I've done in between, that's made me really own my space right now. And all the challenges and the bits that go along. So you might want to have a look at the Akashic Records or the QHHT, which is the Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique, which is the method that Dolores Cannon uses, which is another powerful way in which we can access that part of us. And of course, if it's dowsing, using the pendulum, you might want to check out the online course, How to Speak with Your Higher Self Using the Pendulum. So I've really enjoyed just sharing this little thought and this little topic, which is really quite massive, and the shifts of really coming to terms that I've chosen a hard life. And maybe this is just something in you that you can just sit with and just let that part of you help you to gain that clarity, and just to gain that level of orientation, and maybe how to move forward out of just in any cycle or pattern. So I've really enjoyed speaking with you, and until next time, do take care and bye for now.